What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. I am rolling solo for this episode, but I think we got a fun one. Got some interesting things to dig into here. Before we get started with the show, a couple quick announcements. Number one, I don't have much traveling coming up this summer. My next gig is at the Comedy Mothership. That's all sold out. But starting in September, I'll be back on the road with Robbie the Fire for the rest of the year. So go to comicdavesmith.com. I know we're going to be in Tacoma, Spokane, Tampa, Poughkeepsie, got some other dates on there. Detroit, I believe there's a date on there. So go check that out, comicdavesmith.com. Number two, real quick, we do the monthly Zoom meetings for the highest tiers who sign up over at partoftheproblem.com. Thank you very much to everyone who has already done that. If you haven't already, we do a fourth bonus episode, a members only episode every week. You get that. There's a live chat, a message board. In fact, I might take some questions from the live chat today, so go ahead and put those in if you'd like to do so. But we do our monthly Zoom meeting. It got pushed back, and so we just did it a few weeks ago, but the next one is this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you're signed up in one of those top tiers, make sure to join us Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, so look, the broader theme for this episode is going to be more of the same, which is just the just disastrous cover-up of the Epstein saga by the Trump administration. And this has been something we've been talking about for weeks now. On the last episode, we talked about how, they're trying to pivot to this Russiagate stuff in a very clear attempt to deflect from the fallout. But again, as you know, this is kind of a developing situation, and I've been talking about this for weeks now, and I specifically thought it was very interesting going to Turning Points USA and seeing how receptive the crowd was to Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and myself, and I guess maybe there were a few others there, who were really not pulling any punches about how, horrible this cover-up is. And this is amongst Donald Trump's hardcore base, and they were very receptive to that message. Not all of them, but the majority for sure. And so, we did a whole episode on that. That was very interesting. What started to happen now is both from kind of, if I could take this through, which, if you guys have been listening to the show, you've kind of seen it. It's like, so there's this dynamic, right? You have the huge, whatever you want to call them, the most popular right-wing personalities, talk show hosts, political commentators. They, you have them turning on Trump over this issue. And maybe, okay, if I'm talking about Tucker Carlson, turning on Trump isn't exactly the right way to describe it. Same with Megyn Kelly. But let's just say describing what Donald Trump's administration is doing as an active cover-up of an intelligence operation that involved raping children. It's pretty harsh. And that's what they've all been saying. There is an openness on the part of his base to hear this and not immediately get behind Donald Trump. And now kind of the latest in this is that there's been some polling that really seems to be backing up all of our suspicions that this is a real problem for Donald Trump. And I've been saying this from the very beginning. Now, to be clear, I don't have a dog in this fight. Like, other than what the truth is, I never really have like a passionate attachment to how things are going to be perceived by the American public. I mean, there's lots of bad policies that the Americans have been propagandized into believing and going along with. And I've never made it like, I'm not Nate Silver. Like, my calling card isn't like that I can predict the next election or that I know where the masses of people are going to go or something like that. And I don't know. It's just not something I have an emotional attachment to. I do, to some degree, have an emotional attachment about like believing that I'm right about the issues that I think I'm right about. I try my best to stay open-minded to, other arguments that might have some merit to them. But it just seemed to me like, look, I felt from the beginning, I was like, look, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe, I mean, the way things are today, maybe 3 months from now, there's been 15 crazy things that happened, and Jeffrey Epstein just isn't really on people's minds anymore. Maybe this blows over. But I just, from the very beginning of it, that didn't feel like what it was going to be to me. And I still don't think so. I think there's something about this. There's something about the mix of this story with what it is that people loved about Donald Trump, why it is that people supported Donald Trump, and him letting them down in this way, and him handling it in such a terrible way. It just seems to me like I think it's something that he can't recover from. And not to say that it would be impossible for him to recover. Like if he were to deliver like other major victories, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying I don't think it's likely that he'll be able to deliver those other major victories. And I don't think it's just going to be impossible for anyone to ever ignore how much Donald Trump and this administration sold you on, we're going to get to the bottom of this conspiracy, stoked the flames of the conspiracy, and then in one motion all decided we're covering it up, nothing to see here, move on. And then we're snappy with the people who weren't willing to move on. Anyway, there has been a lot of polling, and I shouldn't say that. There's been some polling that's been done on this that seems to be backing up my initial gut feeling on this, and many others. I'm far from the only one. But here, let's go to this clip. Now, look, I will say this is a clip from CNN, and this is a poll. So if you want to say, hey, take all of this with a grain of salt, that's reasonable enough. But I would point out that like a few things about it that I find interesting. And also just keep in mind, not saying this means that they won't lie about lots of other stuff or present the most misleading thing they can find. But we did play clips of CNN when Donald Trump was coming in with his record high approval ratings, and they were reporting that, and they, the polls said what they said, and they were like, well, look at this. Donald Trump is much more in step with the American people than I guess we wanted you to think he was or whatever. But anyway, with those caveats in mind, it's CNN and it's a poll, or it's an aggregate of polls. So, take that with a grain of salt. But let's listen to this segment because I did find this to be very interesting.
So the president says things are great. What do the voters say?
No, I think is the answer. 6 months in, the rules of political gravity absolutely apply to Donald Trump, and the USS Donald Trump is taking on a lot of water. What are we talking about? Trump's net approval rating. Look, he started off back in January +6 points on the net approval rating, -3 in March, -7 in May, and now he's at a term too low.
So let's just pause it right there.
Points.
So the thing, especially with polls like this, what I think is important to remember is that, look, it's not, even if you don't think all of these polls are accurate, which I'm not a person who's sitting there and saying all these polls are exactly accurate. There's something about like when you read a trend like that, it does look bad. Like the same polls were putting you up +6 are now putting you underwater 11. That doesn't look good. That trend is like, polls can mislead about like a snapshot. It's much more difficult for them to mislead a trend line like that. And you got to admit, again, even if you take polls with a grain of salt, you got to admit that like that trend sure does feel right. One of the reasons why I never really, but as I said throughout, I think the entire year of 2024, I was like, I don't care how many polls tell me this is a toss-up race. Everything I see tells me that Donald Trump is running away with this thing. And it was closer to that than it being a toss-up for sure. But when you see polls like this and you see that trend, that perfectly jives with everything I've been seeing. Everything I've been seeing, everyone I talk to from just the entirety of my finger on the pulse of this political world, I would say absolutely right. Donald Trump was at his peak right before, right after the election, right when he took office, and it has been a rough slide since then. There was tremendous hope that there really had been this new Donald Trump with this new team almost like a team of rivals type thing where you had former Democrats and Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, and that there was this kind of feeling that perhaps, like there was just a lot of hope from the American people that, oh, maybe this will really clean up the system, and that this was going down and down for a lot of different reasons, and that Jeffrey Epstein was by far the biggest one. That's according to my senses, that's what everything's saying. And so when you see polls like this, it's interesting when they back that. Now, look, could I be guilty of seeking out confirmation bias? You always got to count for these things. But I will just say that I'm seeing a trend in these polls here. It's consistent with everything I'm seeing in real life. That's interesting and noteworthy. And let's continue as they break down the issue by issue here, because this also kind of falls right in line. Let's continue.
His net approval rating has dropped nearly 20 points in the aggregate since the beginning of his presidency. The American people do not like what they're seeing, and Donald Trump's administration is in a ton of trouble at this point in the minds of the American voters.
Well, on what issues do the American voters seem to disapprove of him?
They disapprove of him on all of the issues. He's underwater on all the major issues of the day. Trump's net approval rating on all the major issues, minus 5 points on immigration, his best issue. He's underwater. How about the economy? That was what he was elected for. Minus 14 points. How about foreign policy? Minus 14 points. How about trade and those tariff wars? Minus 15 points. And of course, the Epstein case, the lowest of the bunch, minus 37 points, 37 points below water. My goodness gracious. On every single issue, Donald Trump is below water on all the major ones.
Here, let's pause it right here.
Seems what Donald Trump.
And do me a favor, leave that screen up for a second there, because I do want to almost focus on this. Like, isn't it? And again, take the poll with a grain, take the net approval rating stuff with a grain of salt, but and it's CNN and all that. But doesn't this seem like almost? It really does seem like they're touching on something here. Like, okay, he's losing on immigration, but immigration is the one that he's losing the least on. Now, why would that be? It's like, okay, it's because overwhelmingly the American people are more with Donald Trump than, say, Joe Biden on immigration, and that they think the de facto open borders of the Joe Biden years are crazy. And so they're glad that someone's at least clamping down on that. However, at the same time, Donald Trump's like, he's all over the place. He's deporting legal residents because they were at a political protest or something like that. And you're not really doing the mass deportations in any type of like organized and reasonable manner. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of incoherent. So even though they're with him on the issue, that he's still a little underwater on how he's handling it. And then the other ones, I mean, foreign policy and the economy and trade, he's all around the same, around negative 15. And it's like, yeah, because they've been incoherent. I mean, the economy and trade, obviously very related, but yeah, the tariffs maybe kind of sounds nice in a stump speech when you go, hey, we're going to have a tariff and that's going to bring all the manufacturing jobs back. But when you actually start implementing it, and it doesn't bring back manufacturing jobs, and it just creates turmoil in the markets, and it's hell on people who are trying to start businesses or who have already started businesses, and all of a sudden now, maybe they have component parts that come from overseas, and now they got to deal with these increased tariffs. So that's unpopular. It's not working well. But man, look at it. I mean, just look at the numbers. There is one that stands out so far above the rest. Donald Trump is nearly 40 points underwater on his handling of the Epstein case. I mean, that is just like a devastating number. And look, you could say like, okay, part of that is because this is the story of the week or the story of the last couple of weeks. But man, there is something about Epstein that the story itself just feels bigger than any of that to me. I mean, it's like, look, Epstein was never even a name that people knew. I mean, like, he was a socialite, and he was a guy who had, he was in like a couple magazine spreads, and he was at these fancy parties. But it's not like Jeffrey Epstein was like a household name. And there was something that this case, it grew to represent something that was bigger than just the case itself, even though the case itself seems pretty big. It was about the people who are really in control. how the system really operates, the true idea of a shadow government, of the idea that there are all these things that we just don't know about, and that actually government doesn't work the way we think it works or for the reasons we think it works, and that it's this whole other thing where there's like elite party goers who are doing truly demonic evil things, who are blackmailed, and that there are these spy rings and all of that. And I just don't think that's going away. And Donald, I mean, on top of the fact that it's not, it seems to me that, when you looked at how they first tried to cover it up, it was like, it felt like, oh, you guys didn't even have a meeting about that. Like, you guys didn't even like brainstorm and come up with like, what's the best way to say this? It was just like, oh, we have so little respect. We have so little respect for our own supporters that we'll just say, shut up, dummy, and get in line, and they'll get in line. And then they didn't. And then it was like, it was just unbelievable. The thing we were joking about Donald Trump. You're going to ask me this when there's a storm in Texas? Like, Jesus, that's what you got? The Kash Patel and Dan Bongino said, trust me. Pam Bondi just said, oh, you misunderstood me when I said I had the client list on my desk and we were going through it. Like, you misunderstood me. She held a stunt giving all these influencers phase 1 files, but I guess we misunderstood. It was so. And then what they ultimately seem to have pivoted to here, and this is really not, I mean, I guess I'm reading between the lines a little bit, but only a little bit. I mean, can anyone actually argue that this whole Russiagate pivot isn't obviously to cover up the cover up, or you know what I mean, to distract from the cover up? And so now they've pivoted to this, and this now feels like, okay, you guys did have a meeting about this. This feels like, you had a meeting, and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, who, are both still young men, or reasonably young men, they're not Joe Biden, and they still got, decades of a career to look, whether in government or outside of government. And it seems like some of them were like, hey, we can't, like, we're destroyed forever if we just do this. So what can we do? What can we do to get out of this? And they were like, hey, we should pivot to Russiagate and really going after, hey, Obama committed treason and all this, because it just does seem like, first off, the timing of when they made the pivot is so obvious. Also, they've almost, we'll play a clip in a second, Trump almost says it in his own words. And it just seemed like something that they thought would kind of scratch that same itch. Like, oh, yeah, you're talking about like a powerful conspiracy and how government really works and getting to the bottom of these criminals in DC. And so the problem is that while this one, you're like, okay, at least you guys thought this out. At least you guys had a meeting. At least you had Dan or Kash or one of the smarter guys there be like, hey, here's another thing that those same people really care about. The problem is, well, there's a few. Number one, the pivot is too obvious. It's even if this is a good thing, it doesn't make, I saw Bob Murphy said on Twitter today, I thought this was so great, but he said that the Obama Russiagate investigation, or whatever you want to call it, I guess they said they referred it to the Justice Department, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But Donald Trump is saying that we've got the proof Obama committed treason, all this stuff. We'll play that clip in a moment. But so Bob Murphy said it feels like when like an NBA player like cheats on his wife and then buys her like a huge diamond ring after that, and it's like, yeah, we're not saying diamond rings aren't nice. It's like, yeah, this would kind of be nice. This would kind of be something to get the base excited over. But when it's so obviously to cover for this other horrible thing that you've done, it just doesn't it doesn't come off quite as nice. So that's a major problem they have. Is like, it's just too obvious that they're trying to use this to cover up the cover up or distract from the cover up. And then I think the other major problem, which I did get into a little bit on the last episode, but I think the other major problem is that particularly in the wake of the Epstein cover-up, we don't believe you. Like, I really think that's what so much of this comes down to. Like, we don't believe you. How stupid do you think we are? I do not believe you're actually going to hold any of these people accountable. And like, perhaps I'm wrong about that. And I'll have, gladly admit that if I am. And perhaps it is the case that we got so close to like super powerful people that they're like, we'll give you Obama, like imagine that, as how the system really works, that there's actually several levels above president of the United States. And maybe like, we'll give you them. And you could feel like that's the limited hangout. You could feel like you got to as far up the food chain as you can go. But I doubt it. I doubt that's the case. I think they just feel like, we can essentially have a reset of trust the plan. Just you wait. Things are about to come together, and that they never will. And that I just don't expect to see any of these people actually prosecuted or held accountable in any meaningful way. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Proton Mail. Proton Mail is an email service run by Proton designed to replace your Gmail account for all of your important stuff so that you can have a more secure emailing experience. Your Gmail is old and full of junk after so many years anyway. Why not start over with Proton Mail? You can finally get rid of those thousands of unread emails, and you can have a more secure experience while doing it. You can continue to use your Gmail for garbage, but use Proton Mail for the important stuff. Proton always has a freemium version, and you can later change to a paid product if you're convinced about it. Create an account right now for free. Check them out at Proton Mail. All right, let's get back into the show. But, there is something about, like, there's something revealing about the fact that in order to get you to forget about the Epstein scandal, they want to re-drum up interest in Russiagate, which, don't get me wrong, as all you guys know, I mean, I was all over Russiagate from the very beginning. And this is one of the issues that, I mean, there's been several, but it's one that I was really proud of being right on in the moment when it mattered, because there were so many people, even like conservative voices or right wingers on the internet or whatever, who did buy into the bullshit. And I saw through it, which I don't think was that hard to, but I saw through it right away. So I was like proud of that. And I don't mind people revisiting this subject. It was a huge scandal. It is real. Everything that Donald Trump's saying about it right now is true. Maybe with the exception of the term treason may not be exactly accurate, but they framed Donald Trump. They attempted a coup from the intelligence community. And that's a very big deal. That's a huge scandal. But there's something revealing about the implicit admission that we don't want everyone buzzing about Epstein anymore. We want you to shut up and forget about that, but we'll let you buzz about Russiagate. And, in a way, what that says is that what Epstein touches into is actually much more revealing of real power than even Russiagate. Like, even knowing that that say like the CIA and the FBI and the White House would conspire to frame a candidate for president of the United States of America, who then goes on to win the presidency. And then even when he wins the presidency and is sworn in, they don't go, well, we just blatantly tried to interfere in an election. Didn't work. He still won. He's our boss now. We got to back off. No, they still continued the frame job as he was the commander in chief. Like, okay, there is something crazy about. So that actually doesn't touch how the power of government really works as much as the Epstein scandal does. It doesn't actually reveal as much to you, the layman. The thing about how crazy that is, because when you look into the Epstein scandal and then you go like, no, there's foreign intelligence operations that will set up a child rapist ring with the purpose of entrapping and then blackmailing not even just politicians, but powerful cultural and economic figures. People like Bill Gates are like tied to this. Like, why do you need a blackmail Bill Gates? Oh, that's kind of interesting. Wait, what does the Gates Foundation do? Oh, they were really involved in pushing all these vaccines. Oh, like, it connects to this much bigger web that is much more private, frankly, like not government positions, not just director of the CIA and president of the United States of America, but like NGOs and nonprofits and entertainment and culture, as well as high-ranking government officials. And that, you know, there's just something very revealing in like knowing that powerful people are actually much more comfortable with this story than with that one. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think powerful people are going to be held accountable in either of the stories, but it does say something that they're okay with you talking about this other one much more than that one. And I think part of it is because as much of a scandal as well, I'll say it like this. Two things. Number one, let's just say Russiagate was exposed and all of the people who are accountable were brought to justice. You know, it's bad. And it really sucks for Obama and Brennan and Clapper or Comey or whoever else is caught up in it. But the institutions probably move on as they are. They go, we got some bad apples in there. We got to make sure that never happens again. It doesn't whereas if, let's say, the Jeffrey Epstein story is completely brought to light and you find out that, let's just hypothetically say Mossad had a blackmail operation that involved raping American little girls into blackmailing political leaders to be loyal to Israel. Let's just say hypothetically, but just pulling examples out of my ass. Let's say that came out. Well, that massively changes everything. First of all, you're going to have who are all these powerful people who are connected? And as we know, Donald Trump himself is very connected to this. I'm not saying Donald Trump diddled any little kids or anything like that. Who knows? And I guess they weren't little kids. They were teenagers, but, you know, still pretty goddamn horrific. But let's say maybe none of that ever happened. But even so, you're like, how many of his friends would be exposed? How many of his donors would be exposed? How many? And then, of course, it totally changes the nature of U.S. relationship with Israel. I mean, once you figure that out, it's going to be a whole different thing trying to get people to wait, and we support this country. I mean, it's so you could see on one level how it actually would disrupt the system much more for this story to get exposed than for that story to get exposed. But the other problem that the Trump team is having is that as much as Russiagate is a big story, it is a huge story. Believe nobody's been talking about that more than me. It's an old scandal. It's over. There's been 6 more criminal scandals since then. You know, it's like there's just it's something that happened a while ago, and it feels like, wouldn't the time have been your first term to do something about this? And whereas Jeffrey Epstein, even though that scandal also dates back, there's something about an intelligence operation setting up a child rapist ring that makes it eternal. Like, that is such an outrage that makes it like an eternal story where it's never too late to get to the goddamn bottom of this. Even when compared to framing a U.S. president for treason. Even compared to that, there's something about an intelligence operation setting up a child rapist ring that just hits you on a more primal level of you want those people to be brought to justice. So anyway, all that being said, let's go to some of the comments Donald Trump's been making, which really are pretty wild. Let's go to it and then we'll discuss it. Let's go to the first clip of Donald Trump in the Oval Office.
After what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level. So that's really the things you should be talking about. I know nothing about the other, but I think it's appropriate that they do go.
May I ask you about that, Mr. President? Tulsi Gabbard has submitted a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay. I have nice pictures up that came out of the vaults. They were in there for 100 years. This is much more beautiful. We have the Declaration of Independence now in the room, which wasn't here. I guess people didn't feel too good about putting it here, but I do. But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one they look. He's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries.
All right. So let me try to respond to a little bit of this, because there really is. Look, it's as crazy as everything is in America these days. You still got to sit here and go, look, the sitting president of the United States of America just called the former president of the United States of America guilty of treason, said he has the proof, and it's been sent over in a criminal referral by the Director of National Intelligence to the Justice Department. That's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal, even in our crazy political environment. And so, I hate to start out with such a petty point, but I'll get to more of the substantive stuff. But there's something about Donald Trump. It's a weird dynamic where if you love him and you feel like he's doing a great job, or if you feel like he's pissing off all the right people, and certainly there's been moments over the years where I've loved what he was saying, I've loved who he was pissing off. And when he does that, then his Trump, like, kind of cartoon pettiness can be kind of charming. Like when he's picking on, when he's pissing off all the right people, and then he says some stupid thing, and you're like, you're laughing, that's Trump, whatever. But when he's really just lying through his teeth and selling out his own people, the same petty thing just becomes so infuriating and annoying. Like, as he's saying this and he starts talking about how, like, did you really need that whole thing about how the Oval Office looks better since you've been there because you put better painting on the walls or something? It's like, yeah, no, he does need that, because that's actually who he is. It is that superficial to him. That's actually what was important to make sure he got out to the press. That's Donald Trump in a nutshell. Anyway, so this is, this is a huge claim. I think Trump's right about it. But then in a way, it does kind of lay down the gauntlet now, doesn't it? I mean, once you've completely backpedaled and covered up the Epstein thing, and now you're saying, well, no, we're going to get you Obama. That's what we'll give you. And we have the proof that he committed treason. All right. So when does he get charged? I mean, if you have the proof and you kind of said so, no one's, of course, giving a timetable. But right there, Donald Trump said shouldn't take long. Usually, sometimes they say it'll take time, but we got it. We got all the stuff right here. Like, okay, so you just tell me. I'll be prepared to admit I'm wrong. You tell me, when am I going to see Barack Obama in handcuffs? And this is what Donald Trump literally tweeted out, like an AI thing of Obama being put in handcuffs. He's like, really, he's trying his best to. And all I'm saying is, after they all ran on all these promises about Epstein, come on, Trump supporters, are you really going to let him do this to you again? So now he can just stir up the base again, this time for the Obama arrest. So what about when that doesn't happen? What about when this is all, listen, there's something interesting here where even the reaction, at least what I've seen so far, even the reaction from like the corporate media that hates Donald Trump, you might notice they're not really freaking out about this. You know, they're trying to bash him on the Epstein stuff still. They're calling him out for this being a cover-up. They're of course have no real desire to get to the bottom of the Epstein thing at all, but they would like to trickle out like, oh, here's another picture of Epstein at Trump's wedding. Or did you guys know they went to the Victoria's Secret model swimsuit or whatever fashion show thing? They'll put that out, but they're not really freaking out about this, because the thing is, at this point, especially when Donald Trump is talking about what they did to him 8 years ago. You know, Donald Trump was elected the first time over 8 years ago. Donald Trump was president 8.5 years ago. And yet we're still talking about this where no one's been held. And this is after the years of lock her up and drain the swamp. And we're going to get to the bottom of the Epstein file. We're going to get to the bottom of JFK and MLK and all this stuff. No one believes you anymore, including your enemies. None of your enemies, none of them are scared. Obama responded and called this like an obvious distraction or something like that, but I don't think any of them are freaking out. I don't think any of them believe this. And I certainly don't. Be happy to admit I'm wrong. I'm just not buying it. And I don't think anyone else should either. Let's go. There was another comment that Donald Trump made at a press conference or a speech where he took some questions. This one I thought was the most revealing of probably the closest Donald Trump gets to explicitly admitting what he's doing here with all this. But I thought this was interesting. So let's play it.
And remember, don't let them forget, it's so important, Obama cheated on the election. Look, the camera just went off. Obama, the red light just went off. Can you believe these people, how bad they are? Obama cheated. When they give you all the nonsense, Obama cheated and his people cheated, but he was there. You ever hear this? They talk about, if they ever even mention it, they never mention his name. Just the opposite with me. But they only mention my name. They don't mention any of you guys. They don't mention Tom. They don't mention Steve. They don't mention our great speaker. They mention Trump all the time. I'd like to have them mention you. But remember this, Obama cheated on the election. And we have it cold, hard, blue, and it's getting even more so because the stuff that's coming in is not even believable. So, and you should mention that every time they give you a question that's not appropriate. Just say, oh, by the way, Obama cheated on the election. You'll watch the camera turn off instantly. But I want to thank all.
He's going, by the way, he says, anytime they ask you a question that's not appropriate. Well, what is he talking about there? What's the inappropriate question? I mean, it's like basically admitting that when you guys all get grilled about this Epstein stuff, you deflect and say Obama stole it. And that's what gets the cameras to turn off, he says, as C-SPAN keeps the cameras rolling the whole time. What is this idea? Like, how pathetic is this? That we're supposed to believe that that's the spooky thing that no one wants you to talk about? Not Epstein, but the Obama. This is what really makes the elites uncomfortable. Like, get out of here, dude. I thought it was so crazy that he's actually instructing other Republicans that when they make hay out of this Jeffrey Epstein stuff, you just go, we're not giving you that, but Obama stole the election, which, by the way, I don't even exactly know what he's saying. I don't know what he means by that line, Obama stole the election. Like, is he saying there's none of the evidence that's come out indicates Obama stealing an election? You could say they tried to interfere in the 2016 election, but you can't really say they stole that one because you won that one. And nothing that's come out has anything to do with the 2020 election, which is after Obama had been out of office for 4 years and Donald Trump was the president of the United States of America. And then Joe Biden came in. So I don't even know what he means exactly when he's saying Obama stole the election. But this is just, like I said at the beginning, you go, when you saw like the propaganda in the initial cover-up, and it's like, oh, you guys didn't even sit down for 5 minutes and plan this out. You think we're that stupid. And now when you see this, you're like, oh, you guys sat down and planned it out for 5 minutes. Like, this is the best you could come up with? No, you just tell them Obama stole the election. Where are those Epstein files? Obama stole the election, and watch the cameras turn off. I don't think there's any of the mainstream corporate media types would turn their camera off for that. They'd be quite happy to film that pathetic response. So this ain't it, Donald Trump. This is not going to work. Okay, I want to play one more clip on this topic, and then I will take some questions from the chat if we have time. But this is now Mike Johnson getting asked about the Epstein thing. Of course, there was an amendment or a resolution or something that it was, I believe, co-sponsored by Thomas Massie and Ro Kahane, and it was to release the Epstein files. And Speaker Mike Johnson would not let it come up for a vote. So he wouldn't even allow a vote to be had on this. And he was asked about that. And here was his response.
Sir, I mean, obviously we've seen the conservatives shut down the House floor routinely. You saw that you had to pull the rule because of fear of Epstein votes.
No, we don't have any fear. No, hold on. No, Reese, no. There's no fear here. No, there's no fear. There's no fear. We're not going to allow the Democrats to use this as a political cudgel. Remember, they had 4 years. Hold on. The Biden administration held the Epstein files for 4 years. Not a single one of these Democrats or anyone in Congress made any peep about that at all. They could have brought a discharge petition at any point in the last 4 years. They chose not to. They waited until President Trump was elected. I think that's very suspect. And I will not allow the House to be drug into political gamesmanship.
Promises that Republicans made to voters over Jeffrey Epstein. Why not more of a sense of urgency? Why not just hold a vote today?
There's no point in having a vote today because the administration is already doing everything within their power to release them. They've gone to the grand jury. They've requested the courts to unseal the documents so that they can be released. The president himself has said all credible evidence should be put out to the American people while protecting the innocent. That's where we stand as well. There's no point in passing a resolution to urge the administration to do something that they are already doing. And so that's why we're going to let that process play out. This is not out of fear in any way. What we're trying to do is maximize transparency and stand for the truth. Let me say this, very important. We want every single person who is involved in any way in the Epstein evils to be brought to swift justice. We want the full weight of the law to fall upon their head. And I will do everything within my power to make sure that is possible. That process is underway right now, and we'll see how it plays out.
All right. So, I mean, geez, you don't envy being Speaker Johnson and having to spew that line of bullshit. So we won't allow a vote on the release of these documents because, well, you see, the Democrats are a bunch of hypocrites. I mean, they could have released the documents and they never really wanted to. And they're just seizing on this now. Like, yeah, okay, they're seizing on your hypocrisy. Whatever. So why don't you have a vote on it? Why don't you let the documents be released? Well, because we are in lockstep with the administration who already wants to have the documents released. Great. So then release the documents. Well, we can't because the administration has already said we're going to get to the bottom of all of this. The administration is actively covering it up right now. They're telling everybody to forget about it. They're calling you a dummy if you're still talking about this. They're saying there is nothing left to expose. They're saying there was no client list. There are no tapes. There is no conspiracy. There is no connection to intelligence. That's what the White House is saying. He killed himself. There's no thing here. And you're saying you won't release the documents because they want to release the documents. But if they want to release the documents, they should be happy with you releasing the documents. This is all, I mean, this is like, it'd be crazy if you were like, I'm going to bring this lie to a 9-year-old. I'd be like, a 9-year-old is smart enough to see through this, man. You got to come up with something better. And yet this is what they're reduced to. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Sheath Underwear, the most comfortable pair of boxer briefs you will ever put on your body. Longtime loyal sponsor of Part of the Problem, a company that's run by great people that is really all about our cause of liberty and sanity. And an amazing product. Literally the best pair of boxer briefs you will ever own. The only pair of underwear I ever wear or ever own is Sheath underwear. I love them. Check them out at sheath.com and use the promo code problem for 20% off your next order. That's sheath.com, promo code problem for 20% off. All right, let's get back into the show. Look, man, as I've been saying for a couple weeks now, I'm sorry, like this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And it's just too obvious. It's too damning. And I think that the way they're handling this is actually giving even more credibility to the reality of this conspiracy. And it's just making it more and more obvious that you're like, whoa, this one must have really touched a nerve with some powerful people, because everybody is falling in line and they can't even figure out a coherent reason why. Like they can't even figure out a slightly plausible explanation for why they would be acting this way. You know, and Mike Johnson could sit there and say, yeah, I am fully committed to everybody being brought to justice, but we're never going to release any of the info that might lead to that. That's what you're going with? Yeah, right. All right, guys. Best of luck. All right, I will pull some questions out of the chat here now. And by the way, thank you to everybody who has signed up. Please, if you can, go on over to Part of the Problem and become a supporting listener. It really does help us do what we do. Okay, so, sorry. Dave, some comments on Trump's recent endorsement of Lindsey Graham and Randy Fine, and then shitting on Thomas Massey's seconds after any mention of the Epstein files release bill. Worded that awfully. Fuck. Well, that's okay. I think I got the gist of it. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? That's who Donald Trump is. And Donald Trump has, look, there was if there was ever any hope that certainly Donald Trump spoke often about, kind of like a break with neoconservatism or a break with the kind of foreign policy consensus of the Democrat and Republican establishment. But when it comes down to it, this is Donald Trump. He's he went and gave that very good speech over in the Middle East about breaking with nation building and intervention and all that stuff, but he's funding the destruction of Gaza. He's about to help Israel ethnically cleanse the strip. He's bombing Iran on behalf of Israel. We got $1 trillion budget. He's thrown his support behind Lindsey Graham and Randy Fine and telling everybody to check out Mark Levin's show. All right. Donald Trump, this is the problem with Donald Trump. He's always been just kind of a dumb Fox News guy. He's a dumb Fox News guy who's really, really good at whipping up a crowd. Who's really good at at telling the audience what they want to hear. But that's always been Trump. He's Rudy Giuliani, And so I don't know. What can you say? But yeah, anybody who supports Lindsey Graham and Randy Fine and trashes Massey and Rand Paul is as much of your enemy as the worst progressive Democrat. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Sorry. I listened to the audiobook of The Progressive Era a while back. Just ordered the book to read it. Can I skip the chapter about the priestess and the liturgicals? Can't remember how that fit in with the rest of the book. Yeah, I mean, you can skip whatever chapter you want in The Progressive Era. It's a collection of essays. So you're not going to be lost if you skip anything. But I don't know. It's been years since I read the book. I don't exactly remember. Okay. Dave, when the shit hits the fan, what are the best skills you think you'll need? Well, that's a interesting question. I guess it really depends on how the shit hit the fan and what exactly the crisis is. As somebody who doesn't really have any skills, I also probably should learn the answer to that. I think it's a lot more about if you're really talking about a scenario where the shit hit the fan, you want to have guns, food, and water, and a community. That's really the most important thing. And to have friends. You're stronger in numbers. Any thoughts on the Medi Hassan surrounded video? You know, I saw like a couple clips of those things where it's like him arguing against the guy who like identifies as a fascist, and then Medi is just like, well, I don't debate fascists or something. I just like I don't know. I don't like those things. I don't like those I don't even know who does that. Is that surrounded? I know what you're talking about because they're literally surrounded. Is that the name of it? It's like the thing where there's like you speed debate somebody and then they all have to sprint up to the chair and whoever gets there first is your next speed debate opponent. I think that is so lame. I don't know. Like what's look, like I'm not saying I'm above having some lower motivations for everything I do. And it's impossible to like completely remove yourself from your own ego or your own narcissistic tendencies. And, like I'm sure on some level I care about being on big shows and making money and all the things that is part of, being a human being. But there's at least some part of me, there's hopefully a big portion that is like, no, the point of doing a debate is that I'm going to get to lay out my arguments in the most compelling fashion. Somebody else competent, hopefully, is going to get to lay out some of their arguments and we're going to have a clash of ideas or so. The idea of doing like a speed debate round, it just encourages so much more of this like, just trying to win the point versus actually getting to the truth or hearing what the other person has to say and then responding to that. So I just, I don't know. I've seen like a couple of those things and they all just strike me as like, what an obvious waste of time and kind of just done for clicks. So I don't know. I don't like any of that stuff. So I don't know. I don't take any like bigger, lesson away from that. Like, oh, this really demonstrates what's going on in America. I just, doesn't seem like it to me. Okay. Dave, have you watched Love on the Spectrum? No, I certainly have not. All right. Here, sorry, Natalie. Thank you. Natalie got some in the chat. Do you call bluff on the Samson option? High risk, high reward. I know nothing about that. I have no idea if that's really true. The idea that Israel would nuke the rest of the world or something like that if they were ever to fall. Who knows? I've heard that said before, but I really know nothing about it, so I got nothing to add. When are you going back on Tucker's show? That's a good question. I don't have a date for Tucker, but I do think I'll be doing a big podcast very soon, but not Tucker. So that could be anybody's guess. All right. Do you think it's plausible that Israel has dirty bombs set up around the world and there's more to their control of the USA politicians than blackmail? I mean, is it plausible? I don't know. I don't for stuff like that, guys, because I'm not like as you guys know, I don't like going in the kooky conspiracy realm. I think there are real conspiracies that are interesting and important to talk about. And as I've said in the past, I think that anybody who just like uses the term conspiracy theorist as a pejorative, you know what I mean? Like anyone who just kind of goes like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, and therefore that's supposed to dismiss you. I think those are the worst, most brain dead people in the world of talking about politics. Like conspiracies exist. Elites conspire. There's, as I've said before, you're either a conspiracy theorist or you're brain dead. So all the people who are not brain dead are over here in this group of conspiracy theorists. But then within that group of conspiracy theorists, there are kooks who go off on just wild conspiracies that they really don't have evidence to back up. And so the question is not, do I think it's plausible, that Israel has dirty bombs set up around America. I mean, I don't know. What does plausible mean? It is possible. It's plausible. I don't know. It's possible. But that's not the question. The question is, what evidence do you have that they do? And the answer is you don't have any. So then forget it. This is a waste of time. Like, I don't, you know, if you want to have a conspiracy theory, that's great. There's lots of really important ones, but the onus is on you to provide the evidence for it. You have to construct evidence, and then you can construct a narrative around the evidence. But I just have no evidence for this. So that's about as seriously as I take it. Thank you for the question, though. Dave, did you see any of the Hunter Biden interview? Yes, I did. We had a couple clips, but we never got to them. They were in our notes for this week, though. Maybe we'll talk about it at some point. I don't know. I mean, it's just, you know, look, it's kind of good for a laugh, but I don't know that there's that much more of value to the Hunter Biden stuff. Although, I guess probably the best pitch for crack cocaine I've ever heard. Turns out it's not that bad. Okay, last one. Dave, what do you think of Tucker's hesitation? What do you think of Tucker's hesitance to criticize Trump when he's clearly at odds with Tucker and aligns more with the neocons? Well, you know, I kind of look at it like this. Like, there's something Patrick Bet-David said to me once, and I can't remember exactly. Well, I think it was about Cuomo, and it was like it was before me and him debated on Pat's show. And Patrick Bet-David, by the way, I really love that guy. He's been nothing but a great guy to me, and he's helped me in my career and just been very gracious and kind to me every time I've met him. But on top of that, he's just a guy, and he's one of these guys who's got kind of like he's just like got a different mind than me and has different strengths. And I'm very good at what I do, but I'm very bad at just about everything else. I mean, like I say before, I'm really good at stand-up comedy. I'm really good at talking shit on podcasts. I'm a really great dad, and I think I'm a pretty good husband. I try my best. And that's it. I'm not good at anything else. Patrick Bet-David, on the other, he's like this business mogul. He's got like a different mind than me. And every time I've sat down with the guy, I'm always just blown. Like, I'll just pick his brain, and I'm blown away by the way his mind works. But anyway, so he said to me once, and I think I was kind of like ribbing him or giving him shit for like hiring Chris Cuomo. And he goes, Dave, he goes, we all play different positions. Not everybody can just be a scorer like you. And I just thought it was really interesting the way he said that. Because like I get the point he was making, whereas I'm just like, I'm a scorer, like I'm just here to make points and other people are thinking of a much bigger thing. Like Patrick Bet-David's trying to build a media empire. He's not just trying to score points. You know, it's like me being like a shooting guard who's like your best 3-point shooter, and then I'm expecting like the general manager of the team to be like, well, why aren't you just practicing your 3-point shooting? And you're like, dude, that's not even what I'm thinking about. Like, I'm doing something much bigger than all of this. And I couldn't help but think like, oh yeah, he's right. And so anyway, I guess the point I'm making is that Tucker's playing a different game than me. And just because, if nothing else, just the scale, like the level that he's at. And so Tucker, and this is one of the things I like about my career, I almost hope it doesn't get too much bigger, because maybe this will, change the dynamics. But Tucker's in a position where even I don't want him to play the game like me, because we're playing different positions and I'm a scorer. So my job is to just like, the ball has to go through the hoop. I just have to tell the truth in the most compelling way. I don't got to worry about nothing else. But do I want Tucker to do that? All those tweets that that Josh Hammer tried to use against me, where he's like, Dave said Donald Trump's a blood-soaked monster war criminal who should be locked under a prison for eternity. And I'm quite happy to go, yeah, I said that. What did I say that about? Oh, I said that about Yemen in 2017. Hey, let's talk about what was going on in Yemen in 2017 and what Donald Trump was doing. Yes, he deserves to be locked up forever for that. But do I think Tucker should do that? Well, no, because like Listen, I'm not saying I haven't talked to Tucker like privately about this. I'm not saying any of his feelings. I'm just telling you how I feel. Would I rather Donald Trump and Tucker didn't talk anymore? Would I rather Tucker got off some really good point in the irresponsible way that I can do it and just tell the truth and not care? And then Donald Trump comes up with a nickname for him. He divides half of Tucker's audience against him because he's Donald Trump and he's the most influential right-winger in the world. And then Donald Trump no longer takes Tucker's phone calls. And now he just listens to Mark Levin. Is that better? No. So in a way, I think, I'm probably Tucker, and I don't know where his head is in this, but probably he's, walking that needle, threading that needle. I guess you don't walk a needle. Threading that needle about as well as he could, where it's like, no, you still tell the truth. You still say the thing, but don't unnecessarily pick a fight with Trump, because we really do need, even if Donald Trump fucks up 10 more times in a row, but it could have been 11 and Tucker Carlson gets through to him on the 11th, that's still better than 11 fuck ups in a row. So I'd still rather that relationship be preserved. And I was glad that they got on the phone and talked and kind of worked it out after the last time they had a fracturing. But I don't, I think it's like, anyway, I guess the point of me just mentioning the Patrick Bet-David thing is that it's some wisdom that he imparted on me there, which is that even if you're really good at your job, don't make the false assumption or the projection that therefore everybody's supposed to be doing your job too. Maybe there's a role for people like me who are going to hold nothing back and just tell the truth. And there's also a role for people who are very influential and close to the president and are like giving his keynote speech at the Republican National Convention. Maybe there's a role for them to make sure they stay in the good graces of the president while also trying to tell as much of the truth as they can. I try not to be too judgmental about those things because it's tricky. A lot of these things are tricky and you don't know exactly what the right move is. But yeah. All right. We're going to wrap up there. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it as always. And particular thank you to all the people who sign up over at partoftheproblem.com. Don't forget our monthly Zoom meeting is this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. For those of you guys signed up at the top 2 tiers at partoftheproblem.com, we do these monthly meetings. They're always a lot of fun. Really great group. So looking forward to that one. All right. Catch you guys next time. Peace.